Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. Fabulous to have you here. Of course, we're working on the Scottish Claymore, so that's going to be fun because the handle has been glued up now for the second time. Brilliant having you here. Joey is here in the workshop. First thing that he's going to be doing is this table here is very wobbly, and there is not a vise on here. We need a vise on it, and we need it to be tight, so we need some brackets screwed into the wall, screwed into that wall, and we need a vise that's up there, mounted on there. Sound like a plan?
Like a plan.
Brilliant. Joe's going to be working on that. And what I now need to do is take this sword, unclamp it. I've waxed the tang just like last time. And so hopefully... Oh boy. Right, has it split apart again? It's off, but that was awfully tight. Okay, so I've cut off the glue and it looks like it's together, which is good. I hope this glue holds a lot better than the last glue. I'm now going to come back to this 60 grit, use my fresh 60 grits on the wood. I don't ever touch steel to a wood belt. You know, you can touch steel to a wood belt once it's no longer good for wood, but you can't ever touch wood to a belt that's been used on steel. You need the sharpness of the belt, and so I make sure I keep my fresh belts for the wood in case I ever have to use any wood. I've got my pieces here. I now need to bring this wood down so it's going to fit onto these pieces. The thing is I've also got to account for the wire wrap that we got to do, which means that this handle needs to be, to a certain extent, unnaturally thin. And of course, again, that's us relying on this bond hopefully being extraordinarily strong. Anyway, it's time to suit up, make some dust, make some noise, have some fun here at the grinder. Look at that beautiful olive wood. It's a spectacular wood. We're, of course, going to be covering it in wire. I have all of this kind of roughly rounded out at the 60 grit, roughly about the size that I want. I might have to thin it down a little bit more. But what I now need to do is I need to establish the exact length at which I need to cut it so that when we attach it all together and we peen on the pommel, everything fits nice and tightly. Sadly, I don't have long enough calipers for this. Oh, no. So it's going to be a case of using a ruler, and it looks like I need 285.7 millimeters. Of course, I can't read a ruler to that accuracy. What I can do, however, is I can read the ruler pretty roughly, and then I can also make a guess from there based on magic as to where I want it to be. But we need 285.7 millimeters of length, and we need the ends to be perfectly flat also. As close to perfectly flat as possible. But before I get to that, let's have a look and see how Joe has been getting on with his brackets.
Abandons me when nights died out. What can I do? What can I do?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness, that feels good. But there's a little bit of a gap there, which is good because it means I can drive down the pommel, get not only the fit and the tightness from the rivet, but also the tightness from driving down the pommel, its final last millimeter towards being home. That's good. I like that. That gives us options, and this handle is feeling beautiful. The next step is gonna be thinning it down some more on the 60 grit and then annealing that bronze wire. Ready? Actually, I'm gonna anneal the bronze wire right now, and then I'm going to bring down the thickness of the handle. Get our trusty bronze wire that we made up yesterday. The forge only has one burner running, which is lovely because it means that I think if I put this wire here in the back end of the forge, it's going to keep it cool enough that it slowly comes up to temperature with the bobbin without melting the wire, which is my concern. I'm going to turn down the air intake of my Venturi. I'm going to open it up a little more. And then we're going to drop her in the forge. Let it slowly warm up.
I feel there is no other way. It's what I can do, what I can do.
Ugly dougly. So the wire is all now red hot. I'm going to gently take it down, grip it in the tongs, and we're going to anneal it by going into the water. Woo! Look at that, nice and annealed, nice and soft, ready to be wrapped on the handle. But of course, that's going to require that our handle is thin enough and ready for it, so it's now back in there to suit up a little more woodworking. So when I start off shaping this block of wood, it's very easy to keep things even and methodical and square and even and parallel and what have you, because you're starting with measurements and lines, and you're starting with a square block of steel, and you can see the seam line between the two pieces. Now, however, that it's rounded, it's very difficult to do that. So the strategy that I'm working with is I'm starting to work it square. Now, obviously, this destroys the nice rounding that we have, but it means that I can evenly work from two orientations on each axis, right? Then, once we've got it reduced to the degree that we want just in these areas, I can then round it again, knowing that I've got an even amount of reduction on these four sides, and it just makes it that much easier once we go to the diagonals and then round it off to make sure that everything is nice and even, or at least as even as I can possibly make it. Let's go have a look and see how Joe is doing mounting that vise to the bench. Okay, so now after a little pickle here with the bronze wire to get rid of any of the oxides, the handle is nice and thin and ready, and I have borrowed from my very kind neighbor Steve some a little bit of soldering wire. Now, why have I borrowed some soldering wire, and why is it the low temperature soldering wire? The reason is that this wire needs to be wrapped on this handle, which is going to require that I secure the wire. My strategy is going to be as follows. I'm going to drill a small hole in the handle where I've got the most meat. I'm going to cut the wire. I'm going to solder the end of the wire, stick it in the hole, start wrapping it, and then once I've got one full wrap or two full wraps, we'll then solder it, then be able to do a tight wrap the whole way. That time I didn't catch it. I'll be able to do a tight wrap the whole way down the handle, all the way to the bottom end, where again I secure it with more solder. Of course, we're then going to have some ugly solder marks. We're going to talk about how I'm going to fix that once this entire handle has been wrapped. How are you getting on, Joe? Let's catch up with him.
How's it going, Joe?
Going well.
Is it done?
It isn't done.
Look at that. Whoa! That is a strong vise. Nicely mounted. 16mm, roughly 5/8 bolts. Love it. Bolted through the beam. Nice work, my friend.
Done a bloody good job.
Wonderful. I now have an engineer's vise set up in a part of the workshop, a little more horizontal space
That I'm going to kick myself for having created, as horizontal spaces are, of course, the devil, as we all know.
That's looking sweet.
Oh, many hours of wrapping. My fingers are covered in super glue, and some of my flesh is deep inside this wrap from where I got stuck and I ripped it off. That's part of the fun of playing with super glue and part of the problem of not knowing how to use solder. But this thing feels awesome. I've never felt a wire-wrapped handle. I've never done a wire-wrapped handle. You can probably guess that from having never felt a wire-wrapped handle. But it feels solid, it feels heavy, and of course, the handle goes right on. Oh, yes. That is insane. That is a cool look, especially once we buff that up some more. This is just... I never understood why it is that you could possibly want a meter-long sword. Like, while I was grinding this, I'm thinking, goodness, this is ridiculous. How could you ever use a meter-long sword? I'm like, well, actually, hang on a second. If I was going into battle, I would want this. I would want to go and kill the enemies, the people that were trying to kill me with this. Of course, abiding by all the medieval kind of, rules of engagement and stuff like that. I'm not that much of a barbarian. I'll at least follow that. But if I was a medieval person, this would be fantastic. The Scots really had a good thing going for them. They really had a good thing going for them. But what they didn't have going for them was Damascus. And this is Damascus. And it's now time for the etch to make this turn into really everything that it has the potential to be. So while I've been working on that handle, Joe cut out a hole in this piece of wood. And he made us a holder, a stand for our Christmas tree. Look at that! That's a Christmas tree. We had to wedge it to make it a little bit more stable, but I think we can now open it up and let this Christmas tree shine. Hey! That is one beautiful Christmas tree. Woo! And it's in the way of my squat rack. So now it is time for me to finish the polish on this blade with this abrasive mop, because we got to do the etch. The moment of truth. Into the ferric chloride we go. The first little bit, of course, is a test etch. Oh yes, there is no oil on the blade. It is looking fabulous. One side, the other side. Wow! That is gonna stay in there for about 30 minutes or so until there's just a slight discrepancy between all the materials that are in there. It's been half an hour. This has now been in there enough time, and so I'm gonna pull it out and I'm gonna go into something that's extremely dangerous. So I've filled up a tube full of sodium hydroxide, which, as far as I understand, is horribly dangerous, potentially even more so than the acid ferric chloride that I use. And I found out sodium hydroxide can, to a certain extent, blacken steel. So here's my thinking. We have positive and negatives in the steel now that it's been eaten away in the acid. The sodium hydroxide won't eat away the steel, but gives a little bit of a black coating. I tried this on the katana and I loved how it looks. We're gonna do it on here. I am going to come out of the acid and we are gonna put it in the sodium hydroxide solution. And we're going to leave it there. And similar to cold bluing, when you make an iron oxide finish, perhaps on a gun barrel or on kind of machining tools, the sodium hydroxide should darken up the lows so that when we polish up the highs, we get a really nice, dark, deep contrast between all of the three metals that there are in this. However, I think we're only going to get contrast from light to dark, not too much shades of it, since we're dealing with just plain carbon steels and nickel steels. But ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to bid you farewell. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope you get out to your workshops. I hope you go make something, enjoy yourselves. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'm going to see you tomorrow on the next episode. I cannot wait. Oh my goodness. This thing's going to be finished tomorrow. Stay tuned.